The Leftist Rewind podcast looks at history through a lens of comedy. While we will be discussing important events that may have significant personal impact on some listeners, please keep in mind that we are not historians. We encourage additional research on the subjects covered here and hope that a comedy podcast is not your primary source of information.
I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderates.
This, my friends, is a day that will mark history. It is an uprising of the oppressed against the master class.
The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful.
Produire plus parce que il est normal que celui qui vous donne à manger vous dicte également. C'est volonté.
Alright, hello and welcome to the second episode of Leftist Rewind. My name is Felix Thibodeau and I will be your host as always. Today I am joined by a very special guest you all should get used to hearing. She's an editor at Call Me Brackets, the president of the Writers Guild at the University of Alabama, social media director of the UA-YDSA, host of the Name This Open Mic series, an amazing poet, and most importantly, my friend. Valerie?
Hi, as Felix so nicely introduced me, I am Valerie, she, her. Just to let you guys get to know me a little bit, I am, as Felix mentioned, on the exec board for UA-YDSA. Right now we have a lot in the works. The age of COVID has made organizing really interesting and nearly impossible, but not impossible. And so we're trying to start a break light committee in our area. We're trying to create a food pantry. And we've started working with local organizers to maintain the Black Lives Matter protests, which we're having one of, I don't know when this is coming out, but our current Sunday at 6 tomorrow. Currently going on. I'm so sorry. What was that?
No, your protest is going to be on the 27th.
Yes. And they will be every week.
Okay.
Usually
every Sunday?
Every Sunday. Should be at 6, unless weather does not permit. We usually find out every Wednesday and get everything circulating that day.
Very cool. Alrighty. So, as long as you're comfortable with moving on, let's just jump right into the news here. Have you noticed any news stories that have piqued your interest this week?
Nothing comes to mind. You know how everything is.
Nothing comes to mind.
No news.
This 2020, man, it's so it's so comfy all the time, you know?
Comfy all the time. You know what? There was something about genocide going on this week. Something like that.
What? I didn't hear anything about genocide.
ICE removing people's reproductive organs.
Right.
From their
that
bodies.
Genocide.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That one, right.
Then some old lady died, and now I have to worry about never being able to have an abortion if I need one. So that's a really interesting pairing.
Man, what a great country.
Totally normal.
I really love it. It's super cool how the entire rule of law is dependent on one old lady that has had decades and decades of health crises staying alive for 6 more months. It's really sick and very cool.
Did you hear about the interview, it was a lunch that she had with Obama just before the midterm election, and he told her, hey, I'm a little worried about holding on to the Senate, and I'd really like to elect someone that's like onto the court that's, young and progressive. And then she didn't. And then people said there's no way she could have known that was going to happen, despite...
Look, there's no way she could have known that the country that was quickly devolving into a racist Republican hellhole could have possibly devolved into a racist Republican hellhole. What is she, a future teller?
All right, I'll give her that. So, in addition to that, we now have the new Trump appointee or selection to the court. Did you hear about that today?
Yeah, what was her name? She's the fucking psycho bitch that's in the cult, right?
I just know that she's kind of typically pro-life.
Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah, that's the gem.
Let's see. 48 years old. She got her education from Notre Dame. Great start. A very famously Catholic school.
never heard anything repressive about Catholic culture. I don't want to start like going too hard on that, on religion, and no, actually I will go hard on that. I mean, it's just embarrassing how we allow overtly religiously biased people to dictate the bodies of those that are not in government constantly, and how we pretend that we have a separation of church and state.
Yeah, it's I mean, the reality of the question of if we have separation of church and state has been answered time and time again, and it's just if anybody thinks that we do, they're either intentionally like they're lying to themselves or they're dumb, as Cody Johnston likes to say. They're either liars or they're idiots.
It's a classic Cody Shoddy move.
It's a classic Cody Shoddy move. Who doesn't love Cody Shoddy?
Let's see, what else is going on? Half of the country was on fire. My family home was flooded. That was cool.
Very cool. It's been a great time to be in either coast. Really thriving.
Oh, let's talk about Breonna Taylor.
Oh, of course, the biggest news right now. Thank God those cops, they finally faced justice
for missing.
One of them did for missing her. Thank God our system works
and protects walls over people. And when it protects those walls, it only protects the walls that lead into white homes. When the black family on the other side that also had bullets go through aren't on the lawsuit at all. So just to make sure you understood whose walls were protected.
Val, do you know how hard it is to replace drywall as a white person? Okay, it's tough. I've done it.
You're right. They probably don't have someone in their family who fixes it.
Dude, you have to lift it, and you have to drill holes into it. It's fucking, it's hard. So I just think, you're sort of coming from a place of privilege. And, yeah, man, that's such a very distressingly sad story. Somehow it keeps getting sadder. Like, that's the crazy thing. It's like, wow, that's definitely the saddest that story can get. And then they go, well, wait, hold on.
Wait, hold on.
We have an ace up our sleeve.
First, we can try and force the boyfriend to testify against Breonna Taylor and talk shit about her so that she looks like someone who doesn't deserve to be protected.
Well, first we'll arrest the boyfriend for firing back at plainclothes police officers breaking into their homes.
Killing, his significant other.
Yeah, killing his girlfriend. And so first we'll arrest that guy. Then we'll try and force him to talk shit about the woman they just murdered. And then when that doesn't work, we'll just sort of do nothing.
We will bring tanks into the city out of fear of what the protests
Well, the tanks, who knows what those protests could do? You need the tanks.
Have you seen these taser shields?
You need the tanks to Bro, the taser shields are so fucked.
They're fucking terrifying. I mean, look how much... we can't do shit about climate change, and we invest this much in weapons against our own people. Have you seen the heat ray gun? They tried to bring that in during the DC protest.
No, I have not.
Yeah, when they...
Heat ray gun.
Oh
Jesus.
my god.
That literally sounds like a fucking supervillain weapon. Yes, I will get my heat ray gun and start murdering the populace.
Yeah, no, it's pretty terrible.
Oh my god.
Eventually
That's fucking crazy.
Did you look it up?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. This is awful.
It causes it's basically putting you in a microwave. They don't know the full side effects. They know that 5 seconds causes second-degree burns. And what is described as, I want to say the words that I read in the newspaper about this, where, I don't even know, it's something just intolerable levels of pain.
Yeah, so this is what I'll say right now. I'm looking at pictures of it, and one of the pictures is, it's like explaining what it is. It says, pain without injury. What? What the fuck does that mean? Pain without injury?
It causes burns within 5 seconds. So that's misleading.
Like, what is pain without injury? I mean, like, surely there's some level of injury, right? Even if it was just pain, right? Like, what? It's just
emotional scarring.
No way.
I don't know. It makes me think of that like Harry Potter torture spell.
Yeah, definitely.
But this weapon was originally intended to be used against people in the Middle East as like crowd control. But here's the thing you have to figure
sick.
with any imperialistic entity creating weapons is they always intend for it also to be capable of being used against their own citizens. It's the maintenance of power.
Of course. Nothing is designed for overseas. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
It was just like, the reason we created this heat ray of destruction,
was to kill foreigners, not ourselves.
We would never use this on white people. But yeah. Something that's also just been peppered throughout the news is just constantly people are now using cars against protesters. And we're seeing how this used to be a big deal, and it's just becoming background noise. Just people just constantly getting run over, hit. We just had the Proud Boy rally in Portland. I think a bomb was used by right-wingers on, left
Very
protesters. Cool. And that barely made a blip on anyone's radar.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
Allison told me about that one last night. Allison being my wonderful partner, anyone who's listening.
Yes. Yeah, I did not hear anything about that. So, speaking of Allison, your wonderful partner, she mentioned to me to shout out a couple podcasts that she thought was very relevant. So I don't, ironically enough, I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts. I know. It's just like it's like weird. It's a format that I never was able to get into, and then like every millennial, I feel the need to. I'm not even a millennial. I'm Gen Z. Jesus.
Wow, now you sound like a podcaster.
Yeah, right. Like every fucking dumbass that thinks he can speak. I decided to start something. Sorry, let me clarify. Unqualified dumbass that thinks they can speak. Mm-hmm. But I think these are actually qualified people that are speaking in these podcasts that she recommended. So she said, shout out Ashes, and Citations Needed. So I have not heard those, but I know Allison has very good taste. She likes this podcast, so clearly she knows what she's talking about. But if that's, I think those are sort of current events podcasts talking about like what's going on. And so, that's not the goal of this podcast, but it is something that should be talked about. And so if you want that in further detail, please go check them out. But yeah, so if you don't have anything else to talk about, unless you do, if you do, go for it.
My mouth will just keep going. So let's get into it today. Let's leap on in.
Alrighty, so let's just get right into it. All right. So September 21st. I don't want to start it like that. All right, and so today
Felix,
we're going to talk about the week. Yes.
Do you remember?
Do I remember?
The 21st night
of September, we were dancing the night away. Hey, hey, hey.
Hi.
Said to you. Okay, I gotta stop singing. People are gonna not listen.
They're like, this is the second episode, and this guy is sung twice now. I don't know.
Those songs that are very important to the black community. This very white boy just started singing them very poorly.
We're gonna get insulted.
Right. So, yeah, for sure. Everyone's gonna get insulted. And I don't blame him. So 1780, September 21st. Benedict Arnold betrays the revolution. So, he committed treason. Not much to talk about there. Didn't really make a difference in the long run, but,
Kind of all seemed to like mostly greed driven. He was always like complaining.
Oh, definitely.
I don't have enough money from you guys. My lavish lifestyle.
He just wanted glory. Yeah, he just wanted glory.
Yeah.
He wanted glory and money. And the revolution was like, look, bro. Nah. And the British were like, fuck it, we'll give you some of that.
Well, I think his wife had something to do with it. She was like, hey, baby, I'm going to set you up real good with some cash monies. And he was like, and then everyone heard about it and they were like, no. And he was like, oh, no.
Oh, no, yeet. Let me go back to England. All right. So, 12 years later, 1792, the French National Convention abolishes the monarchy. Very cool moment.
Oh, I love this moment particularly, as we were talking about a little earlier, because it's like the first real time you get to see some people power. You get to see a revolution, unlike the American Revolution, which is not, it's not led by the landowning class. You get to see real people taking power into their own hands. And yeah, things go a little awry, but I mean, you get to see people saying, "Hey, this power isn't yours. This power
Look,
is
nobody submits their
ours."
first draft, you know.
And no one's successful. I actually have a pretty cool quote pulled up about it if you want to
I
hear
also have
it.
a pretty cool quote pulled up about it.
Ooh. Oh, I took a picture. I'm gonna absolutely butcher this name. It's like,
Is it Henri Gregoire?
can you repeat that?
Henri Gregoire?
Gregor, yeah. And the middle name was Henry, and it was confusing me. The first name wasn't capitalized.
Tell me your quote.
Yeah, the quote is, "What need do we have of discussion when everyone is in agreement? Kings are as much monsters in the moral order as in the physical order. The courts are a workshop for crime, the foyer for corruption, and the den of tyrants. The history of kings is the martyrology of nations."
Yeah, man. I also saw that quote. Really like that quote.
It's so
Very
good,
quote.
so good. And I like that people kind of look at each other and they're like, "Well, this is fucked up," and they do something about it. What a beautiful concept. What a start to us all. And now it's like a little less obvious, I guess. It's just kind of looking at capitalists and being like, "Well, I have a chance to be a millionaire, maybe," but
You can be a
I just
millionaire.
I think that might have been a pretty good sign to the landowning class of like, all right, guys, this can't be as obvious. Like, they're starting to catch on. They were like, all right, if we like live in luxury, like in front of people and look like people that are held directly accountable for their living situation, they're gonna look at us. But if we stuff some politician pockets to stand in front of us while we rule the country essentially from the back lines and essentially fund our country on oil profits and just kind of hide out and live in that quiet luxury, that's a little easier.
Yeah, man. It's pretty crazy. Like it's pretty crazy the importance of the French Revolution. I mean, we were talking a little bit about the Haitian Revolution that came after, and it's just like it really did signify like to show my nerd here a little. One of my favorite parts of Lord of the Rings is like it's this story of like the end of the age of like magic and elves and the beginning of the age of man, right? And so like this very much feels like the end of the age of like monarchy and very much the beginning of the age of the people. Now obviously it didn't totally work out that way.
We're still on the precipice of the age of the people. We're working on it.
Oh god, if only, man, if only that was the case, that would be sick. Would be so tight. But you know, it was definitely, it's a very cool event. I mean, like, you know, abolishing the monarchy, that doesn't just affect France. That affects every other country in Europe with a monarchy. You know, that's why I mean, that's why every country in Europe declared war on France. They're like, fuck that shit. That can't succeed.
Yeah, and I want to point out, like, this is where the people kind of learn, like, this power isn't just going to be relinquished. I mean, look at, like, Britain still has their monarchy. It is entirely within the power of the people to get rid of that monarchy. But they've survived through making themselves more appealing. Like, essentially, this was the year of, we have to figure out how to make sure that we keep our heads. And they kind of like mitigated that through different ways of power and tolerability. And now like the British people are like, oh, well, our monarchy is part of our traditions and history. But it's like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's all bullshit.
Well, I mean, the British got away with it because they already had a parliament. And so, yeah, the people weren't represented, but the people that mattered, quote unquote, you know, the upper nobility, they were represented. And so, you know,
Essentially, the lesson of France is publicity, publicity, publicity when it comes to your ruling class. I mean,
Exactly.
just the aesthetic of such like debauchery in comparison to
For sure.
complete starvation. I mean, yeah, absolutely, is still happening, but it's the presentation of it that kind of matters when it comes to revolution.
Imagine being King Louis and fucking tanking your country for America.
Oopsies.
Can you fucking imagine? All right. So let's move on, because we can talk about the French Revolution all day.
Absolutely.
To something that we can also talk about all day.
Oh, yes.
The People's Republic of China in 1949 was proclaimed.
Also another...
So, I mean, yeah, go for it.
I'll say also a really big moment for what is considered like people-led movements. I mean, this was really exciting for the left when it happened. Obviously, it didn't exactly go as planned as Mao came to power and went on trying to do Mao things. But essentially, the left looked at this as an alternative to Stalinist communism. They thought, well, here we go. Now we're moving away from this bureaucratic, just absolute shit show going on in Russia right now. Instead, we're going to have like female equality, and education's going to be good. I mean, in the end, they did really well with like medicine, and they worked a lot on women's equality. But I mean, it was a shit show, to say the least.
Definitely a lot left to be desired.
Yeah, but in this moment in history, you have this poor-led revolution that took out essentially one of the oldest government systems in existence. The oldest government system in existence, essentially. I mean, if you look at the dynasties, that's a consistent thing, as a lot of historians like to.
No, you totally. It sort of gets tricky when you talk about the Republic of China, because like technically that came before, but I just had a conversation with some friends about whether or not the Republic of China was even really a nation state. Ultimately, it was, but like not in the way that, not in the way that it was before, and not in the way that it became later. It was definitely, it was a very clear intermediate period.
Yeah, but anyhow, this moment was seen as incredible to the left. I mean, it was just unheard of that China would be the next place for communism to kind of take root. America was losing their shit. They kind of, like McCarthy was like, we went too soft on the commies. We're gonna have to go a lot harder now. It was a major loss for capitalism that day. You can imagine.
Certainly didn't help the idea of the domino effect.
Yeah.
That sort of became U.S. policy.
Oh yeah, this would definitely shape foreign policy for. It still is.
Especially in East Asia. I mean, especially in East Asia.
Absolutely.
Like we can get, you can get into the nitty gritty about it in like places like Iran and Iraq and all that, but really, I mean, when you're talking about East Asia, if China didn't fall, if China didn't become communist, essentially, I would be surprised if we go into Vietnam.
Yeah, I want to say, though, when it comes to talking about this moment where Mao Zedong essentially calls himself, like, the leader of China, right.
Not communist.
I think that's kind of the moment for me where it's like, this isn't going to work. I don't think that it's declaring, like, I read a great tweet. I'm going to pull Twitter, a great cultural foundation here.
Who doesn't love Twitter? Oh, everyone? Everyone doesn't love Twitter? That's right.
Oh, oops. Well, I'm going to pull from it anyways. I'm going to bring down your popularity just a little more. You're already a leftist. You can take it.
Are you kidding me? I only have popularity because of Twitter. What the fuck are you talking about? No one would care about what I have to say if it wasn't for Twitter.
All right. This tweet I saw essentially said, if your communist movement can be murdered by the CIA, it's not a very good communist movement. So when Mao Zedong was like, I am, leading this communist movement, that was the first of many grave mistakes. It should never just be a figurehead. That's not communism.
Yeah, that's just authoritarianism, but with more steps.
A few extra steps. Yeah, but, it's nice to kind of, like, look at the hope of what could have been and consider what that means for people's dreams when it comes to looking to a new world. I mean, this moment just inspired many. And what ended up happening was really dark and depressing and disheartening. But, I mean, those moments leading up to revolution, at revolution, and the creation of this new communist state, there's a lot to be found in that when it comes to the hopes, dreams, and power of the proletariat and what we have to hold on to going into that first day,
Definitely. If you think that you can lead a movement of the people, you're just kind of wrong. Like, the people are the ones that should lead, not a person, right?
Misses the point.
That's not how... Right, it completely misses the point. And so...
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's always tough talking about China.
It's a tough one. I mean, it's a little heartbreaking, but there's a lot of lessons to be found in the mistakes made there. And I am a communist,
Definitely.
just to clarify.
Yeah.
So I like to look at the failings of China and this moment that just really shook everything that had been known about politics and just threw it out the window.
Right.
And just kind of analyze, like, what happened here. And that's important. So I think in future episodes, being ambitious here when I'm back on, if we can look into the greater history, I think there's a lot to be undressed there.
Bro, I bought you a mic. Are you kidding me? You're being back on. All right, the Defense of Marriage Act is passed. DOMA.
Only a great piece of legislation to be put into the cannon fodder of this new Supreme Court pick.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because you can draw back to those cases.
Oh, for sure.
It's very easy to latch onto old things and just grab onto them and say, hey, we were wrong to dismiss this with allowing gays to get married. Now let's point out that marriage is only between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
That's just
real
fun history. Thanks, Clinton, for signing it. I guess it was passed by a majority so intense that he couldn't have vetoed it, but like he still signed it.
Something. Yeah, I mean, like, fuck. Fight.
Kind of slightly criticizing. He's like, this is incendiary for no reason, but okay.
Just fight a little bit. Fine.
Maybe gay people are people, but whatever.
Yeah,
the 90s, I guess.
It's pretty crazy. It took what? So 96, we determined definitively gay people are not people. And in 2011, we determined gay people actually are people. So what was that? That was a 15-year... Took us 15 years to learn that gay people are people?
Yeah. I mean, even then. Kind of. It didn't say you can never discriminate against them ever. It just said they can get married. So let's never pretend that we had full queer equality in America.
Yeah, anybody telling you that America became like equal at any point is wrong. I mean,
well, and let me just point something fun out. My partner, my wonderful, beautiful partner, anytime she wants to increase like her hormones, we have to drive all the way to Tennessee from Alabama to get her treatment because we don't live in a place where her medical rights are protected, and we have to go all the way there just to say, hey, here she is, here's an appointment. And before we could even do that, we had to like run her through all sorts of weird therapy shit, like she's not like a person and like she has problems. It's just we have no guarantee of personhood for trans people at all, and it's just fucking disgusting. Let me just say, there is no trans equality until we have medical equality.
For sure.
Until everyone can access medicine, because otherwise you're putting these people in danger.
Without a doubt.
Like this is like life-saving medicine. Let's not pretend it's anything else. Right. And until we have the ability for everyone to access medicine. I know, big progressive leap for me over here. But until we can guarantee that for people and lower all these hoops and red tape you have to cut through in order to be yourself, trans people are going to be in very obvious danger.
Yep. Okay. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. The hell? You didn't even say shit.
I forgot.
Bitch,
I forgot.
fuck?
Do it again.
Oh my god. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
1, 2, 3. I got
unbelievable.
I got really excited because
well, fair enough. All right, so 1919, the Steel Strike of 1919 begins. It was a very creative name for the Steel Strike because ultimately it was the Steel Strike of 1919.
Let me tell you about the Steel Strike.
Educate my dumb ass.
Educate you. So the Steel Strike of 1919 was ultimately a failure, right? Mm-hmm. What happened was this was just after World War One, and during World War One, there was a bit of an agreement between kind of like this war, essentially they created something during the war to kind of like mediate between workers and those in charge because they needed steel, and every other resource. So they were like, all right, workers, y'all seem to be getting kind of pissed off. Let's make some concessions, and y'all can have a temporary moratorium on strikes, and we'll acknowledge unions. Like, you guys can unionize. And people were like, oh, that's dope. So they got 8-hour work days, and they had unions, and they were pretty fucking happy about it. Now, the steel union wasn't too big yet. I guess it wasn't. And the war had ended, and essentially the money monsters in charge were like, all right, guys, that was temporary. That was wartime work hours. It's time to get back to fucking business. And the steelworkers were like, no, fuck you. We can't work like 13-hour days. That's insane. 8-hour work days. And we want human rights. And so at this time, Woodrow Wilson had essentially had a stroke and was a little bit out of commission. And so the federal government was...
Female president, Edith.
What'd you say?
The first female president, Edith Wilson.
I said Woodrow Wilson.
No, I know, but do you know that story of Edith Wilson?
No.
Oh, she basically took over all of his duties when he was bedridden. So, like, a lot of historians call her the first female president because she was doing everything he had been doing before.
That's pretty lit. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I assumed the vice would be in there. I didn't even think that would happen.
No, I don't even know if the vice president knew he was sick.
Nice.
Like, they kept it super under wraps. So Edith Wilson, anything Woodrow Wilson passed after he had his stroke was all Edith Wilson.
Yeah, well, during this time, his people kind of didn't really want to respond to the massive strike of steelworkers, which was, pretty extensive. A good amount of people actually got on board with it, and so what happened was it was essentially a free-for-all of local government and corporate goons working with the media, and they really worked well with the media, and that's something that I think we need to take into context when we're doing things revolutionary now, is we do see that media will often take the sides of those in power because they are corporate entities. And so we saw a lot of propaganda about it just being immigrants wanting to disrupt America, like there were these immigrant workers, or they were being bankrolled by Bolshevik gold. I mean, it was a shit show for propaganda. And then a lot of steel places wouldn't hire black people, and so they brought in black workers.
Always good for your unionization effort. Excluding members.
Yeah, if the unions had been, well, it wasn't even just like the unions, it was that the steel plants wouldn't hire black people. But then because all of their workers were striking, black people, they hired black people essentially as scabs. And these unionists, they're white people, so they don't really like black people, obviously, in this time period. So that caused a race riot or two. And it ended up falling into absolute fucking chaos. And eventually at the end, like, people were so frustrated with the movement that it frayed so much into things that a lot of them didn't even believe in anymore. And so it just kind of devolved and stopped existing. Like, they just kind of slowly pulled out of it. And so it ended up with just a lot of police violence. I mean, police were charging people for things like laughing at them. I mean, it was just local government tyranny, media slaughter, and then racial tensions just completely brought it down. So the thing to learn is when dealing with a working class movement, you can't be racist. Like, step one.
Racism's not great for a unionization movement.
Yeah, and then so if these people had been working to protect Black hiring practices and working to have Black people in their unions, you wouldn't have had the ability of these steel places to just come in and replace all Black workers. I mean, if it's not a Black, white, everyone movement, it's just gonna fail. And also with this jingoism and like rising nationalism on the heels of World War I and just going into the 20s, I mean, you have so much nationalism. And the fact that the media painted this as an immigrant movement of immigrant workers doing this, I mean, that dissolved so much sympathy for the steel workers just immediately, because people just fucking hate immigrants. And so it devolved. And there was like, it doesn't matter that a lot of these workers were American born, because honestly, fuck people who hate immigrants. But it just, the media really came into play with this effort. And it kind of, really, really broke down a lot of strikers in this time period. I mean, it was just a very disheartening situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's always tough reading about the strikes and the unionization efforts in the early 20th and late 19th century. I mean, even now it's tough, just because it's like the establishment so hates unions in a way that's incredible. I mean, they just...
Well, they don't want the voice of the people. They don't want the power of the people. So they're going to invest in completely disfranchising any possibility of people cooperation, using things like racism and, xenophobia. I mean, that's what they clinged to destroy this movement, racism and xenophobia. And it worked. And that's something that we have to consider when making movements. You have to consider intersectionalism and make sure that we aren't vulnerable to these tactics of, solidarity disruption, essentially, right?
No, for sure, yeah.
That is one of the lessons is if we fracture ourselves, we're ready for a punch.
More sadness. Man, history sucks. It's really sad. 2019, an impeachment inquiry against Trump is initiated. That went really well, and America is a much better country now as a result.
Because we totally, impeached him for everything terrible he had been doing. And
that was the end of fascism in America.
That was the end. I mean, Nancy Pelosi snapped her fingers, and Trump melted like the Wicked Witch of the West. And then everyone started dancing in like a perfectly like multicolored rainbow of human. It was incredible. They were
all wearing the kente cloths.
Oh, they were, yeah, and they and they did the Wakanda pose at the end. It was good.
Oh my God, Jesus. Sorry, I just have to ask this. There had to be one white politician that did the fucking Wakanda pose after the death of Chadwick.
Did you hear about the what they call it for the Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Like what they called it like Ruth Conda or something?
Don't even fucking say those words. They didn't. I didn't hear anything about that. That can't be true.
I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna give you terrible advice, but you should be on Twitter more often.
Ruth Conda forever. I don't. What the fuck?
Should I have brought this up in the news segment earlier? I'm sorry.
Dude,
For those of you that cannot see, I will describe. Felix has backed away from the mic. He has widened his mouth. Now he is swiping at his eyes, hoping that he can swipe away what he has seen, and failing to do so, staring into the screen with a growing level of dread, shock, and despair. This is a sight to behold, truly.
That is so white person and liberal.
I love that you went away for so long, and what you came to the mic with was, that is so white person.
I hate that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's incredible how much I hate every single thing about that. I thought, Jesus fucking Christ.
All right, let's pull it back. You're gonna
You
disturb
just
this
ruined
rest
my
of the
day
night.
with that, man. Holy
I'm
fuck.
sorry.
All right, well, I guess we just gotta move on, huh? Okay, so let's go to September 25th. My whole mood is like different now. Fuck. Okay. I gotta hype myself up. Ruth Conda forever. My God. All right. September 25th, 1237. The Treaty of York is signed, establishing the English-Scottish border. That's pretty interesting to me, anyway. I don't know how relevant it is to leftism, but, anything that declares that the English don't have control of everything is pretty good in my opinion.
I'm pretty anti-imperialist in general, so anything that kind of kicks imperialists a little bit in the shin, I'd say is in the leftist interest.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of anti-imperialism. I'm gonna say it. Another bold take.
Brave!
I'm just full of them tonight, dude. I don't know what to tell you. All right, 1789, the Bill of Rights was passed. Some of these rights were better than others. I mean, only 10 of them made it. He wrote 12, but, I don't know. I think they're pretty good.
Bill of Rights?
Yeah, I mean, it could be better, without a doubt, but it's okay.
Generally in favor of rights.
Yeah, I mean, rights are generally a good thing.
It'd been nice if they, at the time appealed to everybody. But
well, look, all men are created equal, except for the people that we keep directly below us as slaves.
Well, it helps that we had a very strong asterisk at, like, what was considered human.
Right.
Like, yeah, except for those she-folk, natives, and black people. Immigrants.
Well, we can't include immigrants as people.
Yeah, that's why we were allowed to. That's why, honestly, the slow creation of immigrants into a subhuman class is honestly such an intensive thing to kind of realize. Because that's not. I mean, immigration wasn't really necessarily a thing that was, common a long time ago. I mean, people have become more mobile over time, and
definitely a common thing of today.
Yeah, and borders weren't really as strongly regulated.
Right, it didn't matter. That's something I wanted to talk about at some point, and I just haven't. But just the idea of it didn't fucking matter what country you lived in. You were paying the same taxes to the same dick. It's just the reality.
And now we've slowly created the propaganda into saying, yeah, immigrants aren't really fully human status. And I think that I really want to talk about this because it is very relevant to how we are treating people in our concentration camps at the border. I mean, reducing that humanhood status of you're not a person anymore, and thus as you exist between having statehood and not statehood, you don't really exist. You just fall between the cracks. But I'm getting off track. I'm really obsessed with that right now.
No, I'm good. I mean, fuck, I didn't know that's where that conversation was going to go, but I'm glad it did go there because it's important to talk about. So, September 26th, we're going to start with 1905. Einstein introduces the special theory of relativity. This was a very important moment in theoretical physics. Neither of us are physicists, so our depth we're a little out of our depth here, but it's a good excuse to talk about Einstein as a person.
Well, something I think is really interesting about talking about scientists as people is we kind of teach science as a thing that's always going to be logical, and so the presentation of it is always going to be, like straightforward. And that's just not the case. When it comes to Einstein, we leave out the fact that he was a socialist when we teach history. We're like, here's Einstein. Look up to him. He might have struggled with math as a kid. Maybe you can be like Einstein, but don't be like a socialist.
The thing that always makes me laugh is, like, we talk about Einstein. Like, it's literally like we talk about him as if he was the smartest person ever in all of history. And he was an exceptionally intelligent person. But we say, oh, well, like, Einstein was this fucking genius. And then we leave out the fact that he was, like, super socialist, which is like, well, you want to say he's a genius and, hey, do everything Einstein did, but then you don't talk about the fact that he was like, hey, maybe everybody should be equal?
Well, we just don't like to cover that sort of thing. So this is a break in continuity, and I'm sorry to confess, this is our second day of recording. But something came in the news today that's a little relevant, so I don't want to lie. Today is Sunday now.
Sunday, no, September 27th.
But, sorry to ruin your fantasies all. I know I'm a dream crusher. But, Britain today decided that they're not going to teach anything anti-capitalist anymore.
Yep.
No anti-capitalist curriculums, which actually includes union movements, because that's anti-capitalist. So there's a huge history. I mean, how are they going to look at their wonderful healthcare system and kids will be like, oh, where'd that come from? Well, censored.
Capitalism. Womp, 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 womp.
What's the other political party?
Yeah.
Well, Labor's a bad word in school, but gets like taken out by.
Yeah, I don't. That's like so insane to me that you could have anti-capitalist. You can ban that. I mean, like. Like, what does that even look like? Like, in reality, are you just going to not talk about Karl Marx and China and Soviet Union? Like, how the fuck do you teach anti-capital, like, how do you not teach anti-capitalism at all?
And how do you even talk about capitalists without the opposition? I mean, that's just like...
Right. If there's no opposition, then there's no argument.
Yeah, it's insane to me, and that's just something they decided to do. So I guess we'll see how that turns out. I saw something along the lines of like, guess Britain's policing themselves like they did other nations. And someone said, well, when you're an imperialist country and you run out of nations to tell what to do.
Yeah, they're colonizing themselves. Amazing.
Absolutely stellar stuff going on. And they make fun of our education system.
Stuff. Bro, yeah, it's insane. I really am, like, that headline shocked me, because it's just so absurd. Like, it's absurd as a concept.
I don't even know how are they going to enforce that. I'm not going to go into it.
I have no idea.
I'm absolutely devastated by the fact that that's something a country can just openly do. Like, hey guys, here's some straight up propaganda that we're going to be pushing down your children's throats, and that's patriotic. So that's cool.
And it's not even like,
I guess they can't teach about Einstein in British schools.
Yeah. No more, Jesus. Don't ever talk about Helen Keller again. Britain. Yeah. I don't know. I think, like, understanding that Einstein was a socialist is a really important thing to understand about, like, our collective history. You know, like
we like. I was gonna say, like, in understanding collective history, it goes to show that, like, we really like to tailor what you get to know about people. And honestly, I didn't know Einstein was a socialist until I went to college. And that doesn't say anything about college. I didn't learn that in college. I learned that being around college students.
Right, I just happened to learn that in college. It wasn't because of college. I didn't have a professor go, well, Einstein.
Yeah, no. I my minor is international relations. I take a lot of politics class. So no one's told me that in any of my classes. Right. Just want you to know that the University of Alabama does not have a particular interest in teaching socialist
What?
ideology. I know.
What? Unbelievable. We're just gonna have to move on because there's no way that's true. All right, so 1960, this is a big one. The first televised debate between Nixon and Kennedy occurs.
Oh, I have a lot to say about this one, Felix.
Yeah, this one is shockingly important. I think people will...
It's the foundation of the way that politicians kind of present themselves. I also think that it was really influential on how Biden dealt with this election season. Yeah. Something that the Nixon campaign learned was there was no reason for Nixon to essentially completely put himself on the line for no reason. He had a lead on Kennedy. He was taken more seriously. He had that VP status. He was a shoo-in. And then he kind of fucked up this debate. He showed up in gray, scandal, and didn't look at the camera and looked shifty. He followed the advice to kind of like not look as intense as usual, like to stop the assassin look, I guess. Someone told him, and they told Kennedy, "Hey, go for it." So Kennedy was confident. Kennedy was
I mean, like, whatever you say about John F. Kennedy, he was a very confident man, and he just oozed that charisma, and like Kennedy lost in the minds of radio listeners.
Oh, actually, that's a myth. I looked into that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a
Bro,
myth.
that's some more shit than my fucking history teacher told me.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No, yeah, I was taught that my whole life too. I did a lot of research on this, and I felt that was a myth, and I was like, dude. I almost warned you about it beforehand, but I thought it'd be funny to bring up if you mentioned it.
Yeah, you made me look like an idiot on my own podcast.
Hey, you asked me to do my own research. So,
thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Actually, there was way less listeners on the radio than ever before because people were very excited about the TV medium, which actually says a little more about how we changed our approach to politics. Something else not well known is Nixon actually did kind of like figure it out the next two debates. He actually he started closing the gap. That's how impressionable TV was on people. He wore the right suit next time. He was more confident. And the gap started closing, but it was too late by the time the election came around. That first debate just made such an impression that he lost the lead. And even though it got to the point where it was almost like an indistinguishable difference between the two of them, he still completely lost like his lead. And that's kind of what cost him that election a little, was just the presentation in how they handled TV. And so that really became an investment for politicians from then on out, and that's how we ended up with, I mean, look, let's not lie, Trump came across really good on TV to a lot of people, and that's, kind of what got him in there. I personally think he sounds like a rambling idiot, and I'm sure you do, but he still has that strong man, like, aesthetic that some people, like, eat up, so...
Right, whatever bullshit he says with the confidence of somebody that's not bullshitting.
Yeah, he comes across on TV a lot better than Ted Cruz.
Right. Ted Cruz oozes slime.
Yeah.
It's gross. It's gross to look at him.
Hillary's not very charismatic either.
No. And you know who was fucking charismatic as hell?
Obama?
Bernie. Yeah, Obama was charismatic. I was saying Bernie. Bernie was fucking charismatic.
Well, that's something I want to look at a little bit, is Bernie did mess up a few times on those debates.
Definitely.
I mean, he kept to his same talking points, and that was really resonant with his base.
Right.
But he didn't come across that way to just other people, I guess. Yeah. And that's something that we have to look at when kind of like talking about this whole situation of like these debates and electoral politics, is a lot of it comes down to how some people interpret the like loss or win of the debate, not based on like merit, but based on how the conversation kind of went down. And Bernie had some moments. He did. I mean, he made me proud a few times. But I remember watching that last debate, and I was just like, it's over.
No, I mean, the last debate was just like the writing was on the wall in the last debate. You know, it was
Absolutely.
the last debate felt much less like he was trying to win and much more like he didn't want to back out. And you know, I think one of the things that really hurt him is this. You know, he didn't. It's gonna sound weird, but like he didn't rail against Trump enough. I guarantee you, if he had gone more directly against Trump instead of talking about important issues like he did, you know, he talked a lot about what issues were. You know, he talked a lot about the establishment.
I do think that we are getting slightly off track on the presentation on TV. I think that if he had even if it hadn't been directly about the establishment, I think he needed to come across as more passionate, which I find irritating because I mean part of what like is problematic about Trump is just this irrational emotional state of just like intensity. But that's really good TV. Like it is. It's great TV.
Right.
I mean, the dude cracks me up. He's a monster, but like he does the craziest shit on TV.
Dude, Michael Shea has a great joke where he's like, man, I fucking hate Trump, but I would so love to be his friend. He just says the craziest shit.
I wouldn't be able to handle that level of, but you know what I mean. Like it's just it's
for
entertaining.
Sure.
I mean we have like fucked up TV, and
no, for sure.
He matches the bill. But yeah, enough about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it's really interesting. I mean, the fact that he wasn't winning the radio that's actually like kind of shocking to me. I've been told that my whole life.
There wasn't the most distinguishable difference, is what it said in this article.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like the myth persists that the radio listeners came away thinking that Nixon had won the debate, but as it turns out, there was no distinguishable difference between audience listeners. In fact, the most important thing of note was that radio attendance was down.
Huh. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's I just looked it up. It's shocking to me. I never knew how close that race was. It was only like it was less than 100 or sorry, it was 112,000 votes.
Yeah, and the only reason why it was ever put at risk was because Nixon put his neck out there. It wasn't even a real race until Nixon put his neck out there. So he kind of just, I mean, the lesson to be learned is to retain power, don't make an impression.
Right. Right.
You don't need to be held accountable. But that's a terrible lesson. But I guarantee you that's something that Biden's, you know, people know. Like any, you know, political like advisor worth his salt learned that lesson. You know what I mean?
Right. There's a lot to learn there. It's crazy that Kennedy won Texas and Nixon won California. God, voting in the 60s was bizarre. What, people actually voted for who they wanted? It's fucking weird. All right, you got anything else to say? You got.
Nah, I'm good to let this one die.
All right, just like Nixon.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Only good things about 2020 is that Nixon's not.
Oh God! Imagine if Nixon and Reagan were still alive. Okay, let's just move on. September 27th, 1822, the Rosetta Stone is deciphered. This is one of those things I think a lot of people will ask, well, why is this relevant? In fact, I know people will ask that because that's what my co-host asked me right before we started recording.
You know,
and I didn't have a good answer.
You're misleading this.
I'm not misleading.
No, I understand. I wanted to understand what you had to say about it, Felix. I was trying to put you in the headspace, be a good co-host.
I see. You were just trying to be helpful, and you were helpful. I'm just fucking with you. You were helpful because I was gonna come out here and say some dumb shit, but now I think we're gonna have a good conversation about it. So
yeah, I'm gonna say, why is the Rosetta Stone important? The Rosetta Stone allows us to look a little deeper into the foundations of civilization. Humanity had been around for 200,000 years, right?
Right.
And here we were, first time essentially that in Mesopotamia, but like isolated incidents here. The first 6 civilizations that kind of start out. Here's one of those moments where humanity kind of just stopped and was like, hey, let's give this thing a try. And that's kind of a big fucking deal. We've been wandering around forever, and then we decided, let's set up camp. And the mentality behind that, the society formed as a result, I mean, that's essential to understanding kind of like where we place nature in civilization. Like humanity is always like this versus, kind of just what's specialized to that region. Something that we learn a lot about with like the Egyptians especially is how much environment shapes what this supposed nature of humans is. And I think that's essential going forward when discussing our critique of modern society.
Yeah. So, a thing I hear a lot is like, oh, capitalism is like is human nature, right? And I think that's just so clearly wrong, right? And just capitalism was formed,
recently, very recently in human history.
Right. And so the Rosetta Stone being deciphered, it like going back and looking at, well, what did they, if capitalism is human nature, what the fuck did the Egyptians do? Were they capitalists? No, they weren't. They were, I don't even really know. My understanding is that they just they were essentially like traders, like it was a
they had the pharaoh thing going
barter
on.
economy.
They still had that very common basic structure of figurehead, religious class, artisans, peasantry. But something that was a little interesting about Egypt is that, for one, there was a lot more equality between men and women than there were in many other early societies. And they had a very pleasant idea of afterlife in comparison to Mesopotamia. Their laws were less harsh than that in Mesopotamia. And it shows that, their level of success on the Nile, which is a calmer, more dependable river in comparison to the Tigris and Euphrates,
definitely
kind of caused a bit of a more chill society in general. I mean, it's a lot different than Harambe's, what's his name? I feel like I'm gonna mess it up with that gorilla. the code, the eye for an eye law.
Oh, Hammurabi.
Thank you. My brain was going back to, what year was that? How long ago?
Yeah, Hammurabi. So Hammurabi, 1810 to 1750 BC.
Yeah.
So, what? 4,000 years almost? But, yeah, I mean, the ancient societies, they had a very, they did not function the same way as medieval societies. And I think that's something that, I don't know, that's always how I was sort of taught it, is that, we sort of had this system forever, and then the French Revolution and American Revolution came along, and now it's all different. It's really? That seems crazy.
No, there's been so many different kinds of government, you know what I mean? There's been so many different kinds of human organization, and the thought that, we could never have something like communism or socialism is impossible. You can never have it. It's we've had
not
a lot
possible.
of organizations. I mean, look at the difference of the Greek organization versus the Persians. Things change, and yeah, I will agree. I don't really like a lot of those previous organizations. I think that the proletariat has been pretty much permanently in a bad position, and I don't really like that. And I think that that's going to be probably the hardest thing to fix over time. But I mean, hell, we've changed a lot, and we've kind of made some moves in the right direction occasionally, depending on how you look at it.
I mean, I would rather live today than, you know, in 2000 BC, personally.
Brave.
I like the internet. It's pretty tight. One of my favorite things. More bold claims.
I really like having dental hygiene.
Oh, bro, teeth? They're so rad. Underrated.
Underrated. Ask George Washington.
Dude, George Washington loved teeth. He loved teeth so much that he stole other people's teeth.
He bought those rightfully from their slave owners.
Right.
Right.
Well, he
right,
bought...
right.
Yeah, right. When you buy the slave, you buy their teeth, and whatever you want to do with the teeth it's your prerogative. Just slop those babies into your brain.
Alright.
Disgusting thought. So let's talk about a less disgusting thought. In 1962, the book Silent Spring was published by author something.
Author something.
she's my
Well-known and
favorite
beloved
author.
woman. Author something.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. Rachel Carson, of course. Sorry. Yes, so 1962, Silent Spring is published by Rachel Carson.
Big deal for eagles everywhere. You said eels.
Big deal.
not?
Yeah, big deal for eagles. Any animal starting with the letter E was benefited
Pretty high.
hugely.
They
Yeah,
need to keep their eggs from dissolving.
more
nice.
E words, you know. I think, you know, it helped the environment. Another E word.
This episode was brought to you by the letter E.
Yeah, we're like Sesame Street up in here.
As an English major, that guy's one of my heroes. Gotta say. Count.
The
The count.
yeah, okay. Let's see.
Alright, enough of that. Back
What?
to Silent Spring.
Yeah, okay, so Silent Spring, very, very important book, like, seriously important book in the environmental movement. It was sort of the first time that somebody called out these horrific companies for being as horrific as they were. I mean, like...
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, there was still, like... I don't know.
Well, sorry. Of course it wasn't the first time somebody called them out. But it was the first time that somebody called them out and got, like, traction in their... like, behind them. I mean...
You talked about a book last week.
I talked about a book last week.
Yeah.
What book did I talk about last week?
I don't know. One related to Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah, okay, but, like, that wasn't about the environment. That was about workers' rights. I was gonna say, it's like the fucking, the jungle of the environment. But then you interrupted me
Yeah.
by trying to claim that I'm wrong. I wasn't, of course, trying to say it was the first book that got traction. I'm just saying, like, it was the first book that was, like, going against, like, environmental issues that got traction.
No, it was a pretty big deal. I won't.
It was a huge
I
deal.
don't want to shade the book. I'm just being careful.
So it got DDT got hugely, I don't want to say cut back on, but essentially, like...
Actually regulated?
Yeah, regulated is the right word. And so, like, that's a huge deal. DDT was killing everything.
What?
Yeah, well...
Poison kills things?
Yeah. Turns out putting unbelievable amounts of poison every single square inch of the world kills a lot of things. And so, you know, you mentioned eagles. That was one of the... I think that was probably one of the bigger reasons.
Well, it's very symbolic. It's
Right.
great for its symbology. That's something that I think is underlooked as a strategy by
No, for sure.
like activist writers. Is they know kind of like what to grab onto, and to say like, hey, your national bird, its babies are incapable of being born because their eggs are mush, and that's kind of like not good for baby development, you know?
Mush egg is bad.
Mush egg bad.
You heard it here first, folks. Yeah, and so, but that was sort of what Upton Sinclair did with The Jungle. I mean, that wasn't, I don't think, his goal, but it was that same principle of, he talked about this specific industry of meatpacking, and it just like, that's what the public caught on to, right? Same thing happened with Silent Spring. She talked about the fact that bald eagles were unable to, like, essentially procreate because of DDT, and that's what the public caught on to. And so she got, like, death threats, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
people were not happy. She got sued for libel. She had cancer at the time when she published it. I mean, she dealt with a lot during the publishing of this book.
Environmentalists usually don't get the best, often don't get a great public response, even, not even just like from corporations,
right.
Because as we've talked about, I mean, corporations run the media. That was like one of the big problems with the steel strike we talked about earlier.
Yep.
Propaganda, it works,
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like, her publishing this book when she did, it was brave of her. I mean, really, really brave, because the whole world was using DDT. It wasn't an American thing. It was an American, a European, an Eastern, like everywhere in the world was using DDT, because it's a really good poison. It kills every bug, And so her book essentially regulated the entire industry of DDT worldwide. So the impact is pretty impressive. And for her to do it while she was fighting cancer, another just incredible act of bravery. I mean, so, do you have anything else you want to say about Silent Spring?
Honestly, like, I know I've been goofing off a lot in this one, but Silent Spring is really an inspiration to me. A lot of what I try and work on is environmentally themed. And she kind of paved the way for that in writing and in making a difference in writing. I mean, there's there's a lot of people that have done stuff over time that has been pretty political when it comes to the environment and writing, but I don't know, I'm really inspired by that she kind of just took the initiative there and actually had causal change. And I'm not one for, like, totally putting everything on individuals. I really believe in movements, and if people hadn't been stricken by her work, it wouldn't have meant anything. So there was an audience of people being persuaded by that also play an important role in all of this. And the idea that we can reach each other like that and save creatures of this planet and each other is beautiful. It's really, we don't get to talk about a lot of things on this podcast that are inspiring or successful. And so it's nice to have a moment where we can be like, hey, we care about each other sometimes. And that's pretty neat.
For sure. I mean, so you used to be an environmental science major. And so, this is, I think you're dead on when you say that, we don't normally get to end with stuff that's happy. Because there's so much that the alternate reality in which Silent Spring didn't enact change feels so real, like that doesn't feel like something impossible. And the fact that it did, it's really something to admire and be proud of as people. And so, yeah, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's a great place to end the podcast. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. I hope you're willing to be on again. I hope you're willing to be on often. I always love talking to you about this kind of stuff. And, I'm sure next time it will not take 2 days to finish. It will only take 1. This is our first attempt, so, Got some rust to shake off. Not even rust. I don't even know. But it's rust to shake. Maybe that's what.
New tagline.
Yeah, that's the new tagline. That's what this episode's going to be called. Rust to shake. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Have you already done your protest, or are you about to?
Protest is tonight at 6.
Protest is tonight at 6. You heard it, folks. Go out. I don't know if this episode will be out before 6. It could be 3.5 hours.
That would be.
I could do it.
Yeah. Imagine if they're listening to it and they look down and it's 6:30 and they're like, shit.
Damn it. All right. Well,
Damn it.
enjoy your protest. I hope it goes well. Don't get arrested, or shot, or taser shielded, or heat ray gunned.
Taser shield a little much for the T-Town.
I'm just saying,
right?
you know, who knows?
Right?
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? Don't assume. All right. Goodbye, my friend. Till next time.